This is Marcus Whitney's audio universe.
Like, you gotta do the work. You gotta show up and just do the work.
What's good? Happy Wednesday. Hope you're doing well out there. I have had a long morning because I signed 500 books yesterday. Then I ran them back and forth to the warehouse, and I managed to vote this morning with my lovely wife. So I feel good about that. I did my my citizenship thing today, and then I got back to the house, and it was like time for the show. So when I logged on, Sarah was like, "Hey, are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, I think so. I mean, I am okay, but it's like, when you've had the kind of morning that I've had, hey, you do the best you can." Anyway, this is a conversation I'm super excited to have because it has been a minute since we've talked purpose, well-being, centering, and I don't know. I'm just in a moment, maybe you are too, where this whole thing is starting to drag on me a little bit. And like, I felt really rooted in my practices when this whole pandemic thing started. And I'm now, kind of like, I'm hanging in there, but I'm just interested. I'm interested and excited to have a conversation with someone who just wrote a book about behavior change, about rooting into your purpose in a moment such as this. So without further ado, please welcome my guest for today, Sarah Hays Coomer. Sarah, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Like I said, I think I'm doing okay. I think I'm doing okay.
Sending out 500 books in a morning is not a bad day.
Yeah, no, it was really interesting yesterday. Probably 300 books in, I stopped and I just was like, Rachel, I'm really grateful that I get to sign this many books. Like, I'm really lucky that I get to sign this many books. So, it's weird. I don't feel bad. I'm not mad. I'm not upset. I'm just kind of like, everything is just a little interesting right now. You know what I mean?
Right.
Just, and a lot of it is internal. You know what I mean? It's not even about the world around us, because the world around us has been crazy all year. You know what I mean? It's more like, just where am I at this point as we're moving into August? And so I'm glad you're here to tell me how I'm going to get through the rest of the year. Thank you so much for being here.
I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Why don't we start with a little bit of background on you? Just tell us who you are.
Okay. So I started out as a personal trainer, but the kind of personal trainer that works with people who are struggling with their bodies in some way or another. So I've worked with a lot of people with depression, anxiety, obesity, chronic pain, diseases that people struggle with, injuries, stuff like that. So I've always been about helping people reconnect with their bodies. I feel like people get kind of cut off at the neck and do a lot of talking down to their bodies and telling their bodies what they're supposed to do and how they're supposed to look and behave. And so I try to reverse that conversation so that the information is coming from the body and we are responding to it. So my core training initially was as a personal trainer, and then I started doing some health coaching, which is a different skill set. And health coaching is really about all these different areas of life. It's not just about fitness. Right. So it's about, sleep and career and money and relationships and all that stuff.
Yep.
So I do a lot of that, both with individuals and with groups. And then I started writing books a few years ago because I felt like there was just a big hole in the wellness industry and I wanted to fill it. So this is my third book coming out in December.
Amazing. I want to kind of go back to a couple of different points there. So one, let's talk just about the personal trainer, period of your life. How did you land into that specific lane of being a personal trainer? I see more of that now. There's more talk around body positivity now, but it sounds like this is something. And I'm not saying you were a personal trainer around body positivity because I don't even know how you would properly define that term. Okay. Okay, great. So how did you land there? Like what?
So I was living in LA And at the time I was acting and singing in bands.
Okay.
So I had kind of a performance background. And I was also working day jobs as a cocktail waitress and as a human resources secretary for a music company in Los Angeles. And I had an eating disorder, and I was getting to the point where getting up in the morning every day in my body felt like such a nightmare. And the thought of continuing that for the rest of my life was just, I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. So I had two choices, which was to leave my body behind, which I wasn't prepared to do, or to find somehow some way to make peace with it.
Yeah.
So I started hiking. And because in LA, you can just hike everywhere all the time. And so I went pretty much every day. And some days I went 15 minutes up the trail and turned around and came back. And some days I went for 3 or 4 hours. And I found that the days that I wanted to do it the least were the ones that I needed it the most. But I always gave myself the ability to make that decision once I got out on the trail. So I could turn around and come back, and that was fine. And I didn't feel like I was hearing those messages anywhere from anyone, especially in Los Angeles, from personal trainer fitness world. So I started studying at UCLA, physiology, anatomy, sports nutrition, stuff like that, and just felt like I was being brought to life. I just felt like, oh, this is information I can use, and I can choose. I gave myself permission to choose to use it or not. So there was a long time where I still had the eating disorder, and I was still a wreck, and I was still educating myself. And it was just, I gave myself that choice, not only day to day, but moment to moment. And for a long time, I made really bad choices. I continued to make really bad choices.
Yeah.
But over time, the good ones started to crowd out the bad ones. And I wanted to, I felt like I wanted to communicate that on a broader scale. So that was, eventually I went and got a national certification for personal training, but I've never worked at a gym. And this was 2003. So I've been doing this for 17 years.
Wow.
And just never felt like I fit into that gym culture, and was training people out of my 1-bedroom apartment in Los Angeles for years, and then moved to Nashville and got some more space. But yeah, so that's how it started.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Thanks for walking back through that. I think it was important to kind of set the stage for everything else that we're going to talk about. I have one quick question that I don't even want it to be a long answer, because we have so much more to talk about. But people, there seems to be this sentiment that actors in LA are among some of the saddest people you'll ever meet. And I just have to ask you, like, I've never done it. My son is an actor who's currently serving as a United States Marine, but probably when he gets back, will either do something in fitness or in acting, because he was a very skilled actor. I just wanted to ask someone who lived that life, who was there. Is that just a stereotype for people who are from the outside who don't understand, or is there any truth to that?
I would say it is a stereotype.
Yeah. Okay.
I think there's a lot of, they're introspective people.
Yeah.
And that can cause some angst, and some searching. Yeah. But I wouldn't say the saddest.
Okay, no. Good. That's good. I hate when I hear things like that over and over again, and I don't have it doesn't feel like it's real. Okay, let's continue on. You've written 2 books, and you're about to release your third. We're not going to get to that one yet, but let's talk about the previous 2. You looked out in the space of books, and the wellness books in particular, and you saw a void. I can relate to that feeling of looking out there and seeing a void. Let's talk about the first book. What was the void that you saw? And by the time you were done with it, I'm just interested if you still felt like the void was as prominent.
Yes, okay. To the last question.
Yeah, okay.
So the first one is called Lightness of Body and Mind, a radical approach to weight and wellness. So it was rooted in that feeling of permission to be okay in the mess of body image work. and to find your way slowly through that. So, and it was a lot of my journey. I mean, originally I wrote it. It took me 10 years to write that book. I wrote like a 350 page memoir that was just like way more information than anybody needed. And then as I started searching for agents and publishers and all that, which took years, I was forced by them really to be like, okay, yes, these are important messages. How are they applicable? How can people use them?
Yeah.
So I had to sort of pull back and probably ended up using 10% of that original manuscript.
Yep.
But and came out with something that was really about kindness, ultimately, to our bodies and to ourselves and to our processes. So it was about shifting gears in your mind.
When you talked about people sort of working from the neck up and pushing down messages into their body, one of the things that I learned about, but it was only experientially, like it was not something, and this makes sense because when you're living from the neck up, that's a lot of like talk, communication, sort of, that kind of stuff. I learned about what it was like to live in my body through sobriety. That because like I was feeling these things, I didn't have a self-medicating numbing agent, and so I just had to kind of like be there with that thing, and like however it would sort of manifest in my body, I was like just it was me in it, right. And I'm just like, there you are, and that is a hell of a thing. Like I'm saying all this not advocating for sobriety for anybody. It was just something that I did and it was helpful for me. But I'm saying it took something as extreme as sobriety for me to come to the experience of what it is to live in your body. And it is, and it's like layers, right? It's like peeling away layers of an onion. Like I have a certain level of living in my body, but even like right now I'm dealing with something that is, there's a disconnect. You know what I mean? And I don't fully understand it. Tell me what did you learn, and what is the practice? What are some of the models for how you get people to reintegrate from the body to the head as opposed to head to body? I'm very interested in hearing that.
Yeah. Well, the practice is the perfect word because that's what it is. And it's lifelong. So the new book, The Habit Trip, is really, it is a roadmap for that practice. So it has to start with finding your gravitational pull. So you're looking for what drives you. And we're living in this kind of fog all the time, but really right now we're living in this incredible fog of not being able to see what's coming. And so if we can start to listen up, so you're listening for alarm bells, really coming from your body, whether that's difficulty sleeping or stomach, digestive issues, neck pain, like just kind of discomfort. And then how do you start to hear that stuff? And there are a million different ways to do that. And then how are you responding to it? And what are the methods that you're going to build in that, emergency situation, somebody died, or, you lost your job or your relationship ended or whatever. What are your go-to things that pull you back to your body so that you can check in and see what you need just to get through moment to moment, which, with sobriety is definitely a process.
Yeah. That's probably a good time to turn to your new book. So before we go into it, let's talk about your second book, because I like the progression here. So let's talk about your second book.
Okay. So the second book was a bit of a rage manifesto. The second book came out. So I released my first book in the summer of 2016. And then the election of 2016 happened. And I had just come off book tour and I was like, okay, now I'm going to rest for a minute. And the election happened. And I was, all right, well, I got something to say about that. So what I saw in my clients, who are not exclusively women, but many of them are, in that moment, was a complete collapse. People just fell apart. It was a parade of tears coming through my office.
Yep.
And I got that reaction scared me more than the election itself.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, if we're going to turn in on ourselves, people were eating for comfort. People were canceling workouts. People were skipping going home for the holidays, all the things that they just couldn't deal.
Yeah.
And I thought, if we're going to collapse in on ourselves, we cannot fight the fights that need to happen.
Right.
So the second book is called Physical Disobedience. And it's about strengthening. It's about finding the reasons why. What is the point of fitness? What is the point of wellness? Why are we doing this? Are we doing this so that we can look a certain way, or are we actually doing it so we can empower ourselves and show up for the things that matter the most to us?
Amen. Love it. Yes.
Yeah. So that's what that was.
Yeah. That's so dope. That's exactly how I think about all of the practices that I have. I basically see like the work that I'm here to do. I think about that work. The easiest way for me to frame it is to think about it like being a professional athlete. Mm-hmm. And so it's just an analogy that works for me. So I just think like showing up to do this show. Why am I doing this show? Because it meets my purpose, which is to inspire people to, just invoke their creative power, right? And in order for me to be good on this show, I have to talk to you. I have to be like in a good space. I have to have good energy. And how do I do that? Well, I exercise, I eat well, I get enough sleep, I meditate, I do all of those things, right? And the reason why I do those things is so I can perform. Just like, like whenever professional athletes like stop competing professionally and stop getting paid for it, they don't practice as hard. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like it's like the work is tied to, the workouts are tied to performance. And so I love the idea, like, what is the purpose of this? Is it to look good? That's so shallow. That cannot be the reason. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's got to.
Well, yeah. I mean, what's interesting though, is following people's reasons. Like sometimes you have to let people have their reasons. So if somebody's like, my body needs to be dope, you're like, okay.
That's fair.
But yes,
that's fair.
Yes. But the point is, what drives you?
That's right.
What drives you to do it for yourself?
That's right. That's right. Yeah, no, I definitely went down a very certain path there. That correction was helpful. Okay, so we're now going to talk about your book that is launching December 1st. I'm really excited to read it. I don't know if you've got a private manuscript copy you can send my way, but I would love to read it.
I will soon.
Awesome. I get that life. But the habit trip. This is such a great topic for right now, especially because people are so disoriented by all of the changes we've had to make in our lives. And there were all these like social cues and time-based changes. The commute sort of put you in a certain headspace. Now, all that stuff is gone. All the people who have little kids at home, people are finding it so difficult to find a rhythm, to find balance, to find time to do the important practices. So I actually think this book is, you didn't know there was going to be a pandemic when you started it, but it's probably far more valuable and relevant now where the earth has totally shifted under us than it was before. So I'd love to sort of hear about why you initially decided to write it and sort of what you're hoping it will do for people going forward.
Yeah. So as I've gone more towards coaching and less towards training, I started getting kind of weighed down. I read everything in that space, and I felt like things were really dogmatic and really like just sort of hacks for life kind of a thing. But how do you know what you want to hack in the first place? Like, how do you know where you're kind of veering off the road in the first place? And I also really wanted to, first I wanted to write a children's book. Like a picture book about based on what we know about behavioral science and behavioral change. And as I wrote some little, trials of that, and we sort of pitched it out here and there, we didn't go too hard on it, but I was getting a lot of responses like, this is too smart for the age group. They don't know how to hear it. They don't know how to listen to their bodies and respond to them. And I was like, I don't believe that. I really don't believe that. In fact, I think kids know better than us, maybe, how to listen to their bodies and understand what's going on if we give them the language for it.
Yeah.
And then I thought, well, adults we don't give ourselves enough credit either for knowing how to do that. And I wanted to do something playful. I want to do something really fun. So the book is it's behavior science meets Dr. Seuss. It's this bizarre kind of whimsical interactive journey. It's a fill in the blank roadmap to a life on purpose is the subtitle of the book. So it's interactive. There's a lot of spaces to fill everything in. And it's based on the research that shows that when your doctor or your personal trainer or your nutritionist or your spouse or somebody tells you what you're supposed to do, your odds of following through and making that change are next to nothing. It's only works if you are the one who knows why you want it and knows how to go about it. So we have to learn to trust ourselves as experts in our own lives and to listen to our instincts and to find out what those are. So this takes you through this bizarre, I've got talking dogs and dragons and portals and all kinds of crazy stuff in here. And you're just going through this little like fun little playful journey and answering your questions along the way to find your way. So in this time, like what's been ironic to me is the title, The Habit Trip. It's a literal journey. Like we're all stuck in our houses and we can't get on an airplane and fly off to France, so you get to take this little trip on your own at home. So I think it'll be a fun thing to come out right around the holidays.
Yeah. I think people need that too. I think people need a fun way to think about challenging things, like behavior change, that's not like an easy thing to think about. And so I think people need a fun way. I love the fill in the blank journey. That just makes me think of Mad Libs, which is super fun always. And now can we just dig into behavior change a little bit more, like specifically like the actual science of it? Because I love what you said about other people directing you can't really, there needs to be self-direction, but the self-direction has to come from a very clear place. Not to sort of borrow what everyone else is talking about, but like, what's the why? You know what I mean? What's the why behind it? And it sounds like for you, this is a journey to helping people to get to the purpose that will make the actual behavior change that much easier, both in terms of like defining what behaviors need to be changed and actually being effective in changing them. Can you talk about like what's generally happening in the journey that is universal, that like everybody might be able to take away, that isn't just unique for me, because I love that you're not overgeneralizing, but what are the universal aspects of a journey towards one's purpose that someone who's listening or watching right now might be able to take away?
Yeah. So imagine what it would be like to feel completely and utterly grounded in your body and in your purpose and in the truth. And all of us we have these common needs, right? We need other human beings. We need shelter and food and comfort. And a lot of us don't really know where we're missing, why we feel so off all the time, right?
Yeah.
And it's hard to know what the next. It's like you could say 5 years from now, I want to be in this place, right? But to figure out how to get there seems next to impossible. So what would happen if you, from moment to moment to moment, were in a dialogue with yourself that would tell you exactly what is right? And the fact is, we know, like if you really sit with a big decision that you've got and you really check in with your gut or with your neck, it will tell you which of the two options in front of you is the right next step to take. So it's a matter of trust and kindness.
What if you haven't listened for a very long time, which is true for many of us, and getting back on the right road is like, like when you miss an exit and the next chance to get off is like 25 miles and there's only one way back, which is on the same road. That like those
Yeah.
moments in life, right? Like
Yeah.
what, and I'm not expecting you to give me a hack or a shortcut, but just,
Right.
you know, when you are that far off the mark,
Yeah.
how does that work? Like to me, it makes a lot of sense today, but I'm even thinking about like, 18 plus months ago when I stopped drinking and just started going to therapy, and like what an absolute freaking mess I was back then. And like, I actually can't even fully remember what it felt like because I think I was that discombobulated and that disoriented.
Yeah.
But I was still here. I was like moving around and everything. But man, in terms of like having clarity on who I was, what I was doing, and what was going on, you work with people who are in that state. So as the person who works with people who are in that state, what do you tell that person?
I tell them that they are not broken. I tell them that the brokenness, there's actually a woman that I quote in the book named Sonia, the broken is the beauty. So people believe the thing to do is to understand that bad habits are not flaws. They are coping mechanisms that make perfect sense, that are built to, give us some relief and a way forward. So that is the place to start with people is what feels broken to you? What is it doing for you? What is that void that you're trying to fill? And then how are some other ways that we can find, but to fill that void? But to do that, you have to start with the bad habit, which is your greatest teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can sit with it, like you were talking about in the beginning, sitting with this kind of, if you can sit with that and not judge it and not be reactive to it and get into that guilt cycle, then you can actually listen to it and try to see what it is that you actually are needing and then respond to that need with reinforcements.
So what you just said is so incredibly true in my lived experience, because the thing that made the very difficult physical experience of getting sober, especially kind of like a cold turkey form of sobriety, the thing that made it easy at the end of the day, meaning like I really didn't Jones for a drink. Like once I decided, okay, that's what I mean. That easy in that way.
Yeah.
And I didn't go to meetings or any of that kind of stuff because actually that wasn't going to be helpful for me.
Mm-hmm.
It was viewing my relationship with alcohol as a coping mechanism and as a tool that was very effective but had some really nasty side effects, and that but it was a really good tool,
right, totally.
It was a really good tool, and just
Works.
and just sort of saying I just need to kind of elevate to a better tool with less side effects, and maybe even like that's got like some great benefits to it, and just that framing, because it just relieved any of the broken, flawed, bad, shame, all of that stuff. You know what I mean? And the thing is, that stuff is just not useful.
No,
it's not useful if you're trying to progress.
Right. Yeah. This reminds me of something that I actually saw you say at the, it was your Parnassus event where you were talking about blame. I think you were talking about a Medium post that you had done on race.
Oh yeah.
But you were talking about how blame this whole thing is not about blame or shame. This is about looking at reality and looking at opportunities to do something about that reality.
Yeah.
And that just resonated so much with me because this kind of like, you're doing something wrong, it just sends you back into the same cycle.
That's right.
So if you can just kind of go, okay, well, this is a legit thing that I'm doing here. Why?
Right.
And what else can I do about it?
Right. Amazing. Yeah. So I think I told you these half hours go really fast.
Yeah.
Is there anything that we didn't touch on that you want to talk about before we wrap?
No, I don't think so.
Awesome.
That's great.
Awesome. This was a great conversation. We'll have to follow up when the book actually like hits the world and you're super excited and you can make this show a stop on your virtual /real hopefully part of it's real. Hopefully the world has improved a little bit by December, and you can actually venture out and see some things. But regardless, we're going to be here to support you. So thank you so much, Sarah, for being on the show. Everybody follow Sarah. Just put all of her great follows, and they'll be in the show notes as well. SarahHaysCoomer.com. It's where you can find out about everything that she does, all the books, all that good stuff. Check her out on social, Sarah Hays Coomer on Twitter, and Sarah Hays Coomer with some dots in between on Insta. But definitely follow her. I think, if you've listened to this half hour, you've definitely been inspired, and hopefully got some important insights that will help you to navigate to a better relationship with yourself. The book Create and Orchestrate is out. I shipped out 500 copies. I'd be happy to ship out another 500. Feel free to go buy, a copy or 10. I don't care. At creativepower.co or at Amazon. The podcast, Marcus Whitney's Audio Universe, wherever you listen to podcasts, subscribe. I need more subscribers. Please subscribe. Come on. And follow me at Marcus Whitney online. And that's it. I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of their Wednesday. And I will see you back tomorrow for another episode. Marcus Whitney Live. Let's build a new normal, y'all. Peace.
Thank you for tuning in to Marcus Whitney's Audio Universe.